Back here on the Cover 3 Takeover here on CBS Sports HQ. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Barrett Sallee. Time to take a spin around the country with some of our best bets from every single conference. We begin in the Southeastern Conference. There's a lot that you can choose from. Obviously, the SEC on CBS Game of the Week between Alabama and Arkansas might be enticing. Maybe you want a little Georgia, Missouri. Barrett, why don't you get us started? What game has your attention? What's your best bet in the SEC?
I'm going to lovely Stark Vegas, the greatest town in the SEC. Texas A&M and Mississippi State. I'm taking the under in this game. I don't think Texas A&M figured out anything about its offense last week. Then they lose Aniyah Smith for the rest of the season. He's their biggest playmaker. Really, what are they? They're Devin Achane. That's it. That's all the offense is. And I don't think Mississippi State's going to feel threatened. And at the same time, I think Zach Arnett, their defensive coordinator, is going to dial up a bunch of creative stunts and things like that to confuse Texas A&M's offensive line. So they're going to be ugly. They're going to be sloppy. I think you're going to see multiple turnovers. I think you're going to see those cowbells making a lot of noise, making the Aggies frustrated. I think it's going to be more of a 17-14 style game. I know it's a low number. 45 and a hook is low. I think it'll go well under that because I think both of these teams are going to try to win with defense.
You know, Barrett, you mentioned a lot of reasons why nobody should bet on Texas A&M this week, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm buying low on the Aggies here. I don't even want the points. I'm taking Texas A&M straight up to beat Mississippi State because while this is a team that does have some question marks on offense, we saw the stat there a moment ago about the fewest points allowed per game. This defense has been phenomenal all season long. They stymied Arkansas last week, one of the most explosive offenses in the country. And yes, they got a little bit lucky to get away with the win there, but I still think that this game against Mississippi State, from what I've seen of the Bulldogs so far this year, the offense has looked good against bad teams. When it ran into a team with half a defense in LSU, the Bulldogs weren't really able to do a whole lot against it, and I see something similar playing out again this week against a better Aggies defense. So I'm taking Texas A&M on the money line. I do not want the points.
I am not afraid at all of the enormous spread that we have between Georgia and Missouri. I am comfortably laying 29 points, more than 4 whole touchdowns between the Bulldogs and the Tigers. And I think it's because Georgia is going to come into this game playing with an edge, playing with a determination to erase some of the sloppiness, a determination to erase some of the poor execution, and some of the issues which made the win against Kent State far from impressive just last week. So they find themselves now in a primetime game against a Missouri team that defensively is going to give up a lot of points. And I think that specifically the way that we can cover this is because the Bulldogs are going to be motivated to make sure that Missouri does not get into the end zone once. Easy 30-plus point win for Georgia. I will comfortably lay them, and I will take the Dogs to do all sorts of unspeakable things to Missouri on Saturday night. We turn our attention to the Big Ten. Tom, we'll get started with you first. What is your best bet in the Big?
I'm going to go again a little bit against the grain here. Give me Iowa and the points at home against Michigan. We have seen over the years that Kinnick Stadium is not kind to top 5 teams coming to town. Iowa has won 5 of the last 6 games in which a top 5 team has come to Iowa City to face them. And the only time they lost was a couple years ago when Penn State won on a play in the final seconds of the game. In fact, it was the last play of the game. This is an Iowa team that it's very easy to write off because offensively it has been an absolute mess. They cannot score. Their quarterback hasn't thrown a touchdown, I think, since 1983 in a game. It's been a long time. But defensively, this is still a very stout, very sound team. And last week when I watched Michigan against Maryland, I raised some red flags and alarm bells for me because this was a pass rush that was dominant last year and had been dominant in Michigan's first 3 games of the season against a bunch of nobodies. Against Maryland, that pass rush disappeared for the most part, and offensively, the Wolverines really had nothing to offer save for a few big runs by Blake Corum that bailed them out and saved their butts from being upset at home by the Terps. I don't think Blake Corum's going to find nearly as much room to run this weekend against Iowa, so while I don't think Iowa's going to pull off the upset, I do think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be ugly. So if I can get over 10 points, give me the Hawkeyes.
I like it. I like it. I'm gonna take. Let's play a game. You put Minnesota's logo on Michigan, you see a top 25 team. You put Michigan's logo on Minnesota's helmet, they would be a top 10 team. Minnesota is going to absolutely annihilate Purdue. This team is really good on both sides of the balls. We know about Tanner Morgan and what he can do through the air, but the running back combo, Mo Ibrahim and Trey Potts, both of them coming back from injury from last year, just flat out awesome for these Golden Gophers. And then defensively, you kind of know what you're going to get from a PJ Fleck coach team. A complete team going up against Purdue as 12-point favorites. I think this is a 3-touchdown game. I don't think Minnesota's getting anywhere close to the amount of respect that it deserves. Like I said, this would be a top 10 team if you just switch logos and put the Michigan logo. I think they're that good. They're contenders in the Big Ten. In fact, I would say they're the best team in the Big Ten West by far at this point.
Yeah, and y'all listen up, because Barrett was on this here program telling you about Minnesota last week before Michigan State. He was out here telling you line too little. He knows that the Gophers are a good football team, and the market has not caught up. And look, this might be a Chip's Bargain Basement clearance sale where this is the last time that we can get this kind of price on Minnesota right now. And you know what? I think that this is also a clearance sale on the last chance that we can look at Wisconsin and say that that's not a good football team. Because through 4 games, you tell me what Wisconsin's best win is. Wisconsin's wins came against New Mexico State and Illinois State. So what's the best win? The FCS one, or the one that is one of the 5 to 10 worst teams of 131 FBS teams? I just don't think the Badgers are anywhere close to the standard right now. And I think that Illinois defensively is like elite. Yeah, I'll say it. They are elite defensively. They've got a good running game, as we know, with Chase Brown, good deep backfield. I think this game is low scoring. I think it's a rock fight. I don't trust Graham Mertz and Braylon Allen to be able to just, dominate Illinois the way that that defense has played so far this year. So 7 whole points. Market ain't caught up to a Wisconsin team that is just middling, and everybody in the Big Ten West is about the same, except for Minnesota, who Barrett has been telling you about for 2 weeks. So yeah, give me the Fighting Illini plus the points. It's a game that straight up I think they could win. What about in the ACC? Barrett, you've got 2 ranked-on-ranked matchups, both from the ACC Atlantic. You've got a couple of ACC Coastal Division games as well. What is going to get your best bet for the Atlantic Coast Conference?
I'm going to go with the Tar Heels. Obviously, the weather might be a little bit of a factor, but the Tar Heels, look, I know we make fun of North Carolina's defense, and rightfully so, but we should be making the same jokes about Virginia Tech's offense because it's as bad as North Carolina's defense. So it is weakness on weakness and strength versus strength. And in that case, I will take the offense because offense drives the bus in college football. So give me Drake May. I love that North Carolina offense. Weapons all over the place. I think you're seeing just how creative that offensive staff can get with some of these weapons. And you're gonna see a shootout. Anytime you're in a North Carolina game, it's gonna be a shootout. You trust Virginia Tech to keep up in a shootout? I don't. So give me the Tar Heels, lay those points. I don't think it's going to be much of an issue.
I'm going to be taking Wake Forest and the 6.5 points I get with them, although I do still wish it was at 7, but 6.5 will be enough. We saw this Wake team last week against Clemson move the ball consistently up and down the field on offense against a Clemson team that is supposed to be the standard bearer of defense in the ACC. And if they can do that against Clemson, I think they're going to be able to do it this week against a Florida State team that I admit is much improved. Mike Norvell has got that program heading in the right direction. If you are a Seminoles fan, you should be encouraged by what you're seeing. But I don't really buy that the Seminoles are a team that's going to be 4-0 and a team that's going to be competing for the Atlantic Division in 2022. I do think there are flaws, and when I look at this matchup, I like Jordan Travis a lot. He's an exciting player. He's got a ton of potential. But Sam Hartman is the best quarterback in this game, and if I get nearly a touchdown with the team that has the better quarterback, I'm going to take it. So give me the Deeks.
I will turn our attention to Durham, North Carolina. And Barrett, to your point, I do think that the Storm will be moved out of the state of North Carolina by the early Saturday morning hours. Might actually be quite pleasant. A little overcast for those in Chapel Hill, but it's going to taste like a win in Durham on Saturday night as Mike Elko gets his first ACC win against Virginia. This is a Duke team that offensively has far exceeded my expectations. Riley Leonard has stepped into the quarterback position and played pretty well. Defensively, I had somewhat high expectations, and they have met them. Where I think was the more talented side of the ball in terms of the roster that Mike Elko took over, and they have been playing at a pretty high level. Really, only Kansas, who's very good offensively, has been able to move the ball effectively and consistently against this Blue Devils team. Virginia's offense is so far from where it was a year ago. The offensive line can't block. Brennan Armstrong and good wide receivers can't even have the same kind of production because they don't have the same kind of time. And defensively, they are improved, but not enough to win this game. So give me Duke minus the short number in Durham on Saturday night. Well, we're not done. We're not done with this conference by conference look with our best bets. We turn our attention to the Pac-12. We turn our attention to the Big 12 and the American Athletic Conference next. Back here on the Cover 3 Takeover here on CBS Sports HQ. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Barrett Sallee. I'm Chip Patterson. We are continuing our best bets for Week 5, going conference by conference, and our attention turns to the Big 12. We have a huge game for the Big 12 title race. Well, a couple of them, actually. You got Baylor, Oklahoma State. You've got Oklahoma nursing its wounds, having to go play TCU. Tom, why don't you go ahead and get us started? What is your best bet for the Big 12?
Going with the same bet I've been making for the last few weeks in the Big 12, a team that keeps printing money for me. Give me the Kansas Jayhawks at home catching 3 points against the Iowa State Cyclones. Kansas is one of the best teams in the country. Nobody realizes it yet because it's called Kansas. But offensively, this team has been unstoppable. They have one of the most explosive, most efficient offenses in the country, and nobody can stop them from ripping off big play after big play in the run game. Jalen Daniels has been outstanding at quarterback, and if he keeps playing the way he has been playing, he will be a Heisman candidate and receive votes by the end of the year, I am telling you. Meanwhile, Iowa State is a team that is still solid, is still good, but is not quite the same kind of Iowa State team that we have seen in recent years. Offensively, they're fine. Defensively, they're fine. There's nothing particularly special about them. They are not the plucky underdog that you're used to seeing. That's Kansas now. And one of the long rules about betting Iowa State is you want to bet it as an underdog. You do not want to bet it as a favorite, and you particularly do not want to bet Iowa State as a road favorite, not against a team this good. So give me Kansas and the point.
I think we all sort of fell in love with Kansas State with what it did last week and Adrian Martinez. This is going to come crashing down to earth. I think the market kind of fell in love with Kansas State because it beat Oklahoma, but we kind of overlooked that Texas Tech was actually really good when it beat Texas. I think the Red Raiders not only go to Manhattan, but they win it outright. So more than a money line sprinkle on the Red Raiders. Donovan Smith, a really good quarterback. We saw that last week when he threw for over 3 bills against Texas. And so I think when you're looking at this game, who has the more consistent offense? It is Texas Tech. Because look, Adrian Martinez, despite what he did last week, still one of the worst quarterbacks statistically in the Big 12. And that is not going to change this week. So give me the Red Raiders. Give them to me outright. But I'll grab those points just in case. I think this is going to be I think the world is going to catch up a little bit to what Texas Tech is doing, because it wasn't just Texas losing. A team actually did win that game, and it is Sean McGuire's team.
Yeah, Kansas State capable of beating Oklahoma and losing to Tulane. I don't know. Sure. I don't know if they could be trusted. We got to at least take that in consideration. But that's not my best bet. I'm going to Baylor, Oklahoma State, one of the really great Big 12 rivalries, especially as we look at the future of the Big 12 and these two teams becoming the powers that are going to be in that league's future. You know, their awesome conference championship game last year. So they played twice last year. The point totals in that game, 37 and 38 points. Now, I know that we saw a lot of defensive players leave on both sides of the ball. Defensive coordinator Jim Knowles off to Ohio State. But come on, 56.5. This number is just way off from what we are going to see when Baylor and Oklahoma State play against each other. I think both these teams are going to try to limit mistakes. I think both these teams are going to lean on their defense, and we are going to see Mike Gundy and Dave Aranda engage in a chess match that many times will lead to a stalemate of a possession. So I think that we have at least a touchdown of value here. This total is going to end up coming out around 49 or 50, 56.5. We're going way under in Baylor and Oklahoma State. What about taking things out west? Barrett, what is your best bet for the Pac-12 this week?
Well, I don't know if anybody's going to stay awake for the 11 p.m. Eastern time kickoff between Oregon and Stanford, but I am, and I'm going to take the over because I'm going to see a lot of offense in this game. The Bo Nix experience, man, for Oregon, we saw in full effect last week against Washington State, and Stanford's offense actually pretty darn good. Now, I know they'll be without E.J. Smith, the star running back, but Tanner McKee is a really, really good pocket passer, but I think the biggest thing in this one is we saw Oregon's secondary struggle at times against big-time opponents throughout the course of the early part of the season. Stanford's got big, tall receivers, talking 6'2", 6'3". Michael Wilson, a really good outside target for Tanner McKee. I don't think Oregon's going to be able to slow them down. So I think in this game, look, I don't trust Stanford to win the game. I think Oregon will get the job done. But late night, Pac-12 after dark, 11 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. Yes, I'm a little bitter about that on the East Coast, but I think you're going to see a lot of points in this one. I think you're going to hit that over relatively easy.
My best Pac-12 play for the weekend is actually happening on Friday night, so you better get to bed in early if you're watching right now. I am taking Washington -2.5 at UCLA. Both of these teams are off to 4-0 start. But UCLA ain't played nobody. If you look at their schedule, they've been playing nothing but teams that most people probably haven't heard of or know absolutely nothing about. Meanwhile, Washington is 4-0, and it's picked up wins over Michigan State, a win last week over the Stanford team Barrett was just talking about, which he's correct. It's much better than I think most people realize. And they also picked up a win in week 1 over the Kent State team that gave Georgia a run for its money last week. The Huskies are terrific offensively. Michael Penix is transferred in from Indiana and is balling out. Kalen DeBoer has this team humming, the new head coach for the Huskies. Meanwhile, UCLA has been great offensively as well, but again, they haven't played anybody. And when you look at these two teams on the defensive side of the ball, Washington's been much better on that side despite playing tougher competition along the way. UCLA, I know they're at home tonight, but it's a Friday night in rush hour in LA. Nobody's making that drive to the Rose Bowl. That place is going to be empty. There will be no atmosphere. Take the Huskies, lay the points. They're going to cruise.
For my best bet in the Pac-12, I'm going to go to USC. I don't want to deal with the full game. I know that this is a Trojans team that should be able to absolutely work Arizona State. It's a group that's also going to come in with a lot of fire after the offense had a little bit of struggled just a little bit against Oregon State. So I think that Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, they come in with a brilliant game script against a skeleton staff and an Arizona State defense that I think it's going to be potentially checked out on the season, even with the Trojans in town. So I think that we want to get in on the first half, but we don't want to get in on seeing whether or not Emory Jones can come kick in that back door. We don't want to get in on seeing what happens if USC decides that they're just going to pack it in and go to the spring game offense. So we're going to go first half only, USC -15.5. And then, hey, we can just move on and turn our eyes elsewhere once we cash this ticket at halftime. All right, Tom, what about in the American Athletic Conference? There is a game involving an American Athletic Conference team, which is close to your heart. What is your best bet in the AAC?
Oh, Chip, it's the best bet of the year, or it's one of the 3 best bets of the year anyway. We've got Air Force and Navy playing this weekend, 2 service academies. And what do we do when service academies play? We bet the under, and we do it happily. Since 2005, in games between service academies, Army, Navy, and Air Force, the under is 41-9-1. And it's pretty simple to figure out why. These teams all run option offenses. They run the ball the entire game. The clock never stops. And when the clock never stops, it limits the overall number of possessions. And the fewer possessions there are in a game, the fewer opportunities there are to score points. Oh, and by the way, while these teams have somewhat of an advantage against most teams because they don't see a lot of option offenses and don't really know how to defend them, Both of these teams spend every single day of their lives learning how to defend the option because they face it every day in practice. So these two teams get together, whether it's Army, Air Force, or Navy, you see them in any combination. You don't question it. You don't think twice. You blindly bet the under. Don't be scared about how low the number is. It's that low for a reason.
There's no doubt. I'm with you on that, Tom. I'm going to go from low scoring to what I think will be high scoring. I'm going to take Tulsa, and I'll grab those points against Cincinnati for a couple reasons. One, I think we have this sort of leftover idea that Cincinnati's defense is as good as it was last year. It's not, but I think we don't recognize how good Tulsa's offense is. Tops in the AAC in total offense, second behind Cincinnati in yards per play and scoring offense. So I think you're going to see a shootout. I think you're going to see one that in a situation like this, one turnover might cause it go to one side or the other, but I think it's going to be a close game. I think you're going to see points aplenty. The home field advantage, I think, does help a little bit. I think it'll be a 7-point game. I think Cincinnati will get the job done, but I do think you're going to grab 10. I'm taking it. I think the Golden Hurricane, singular, keep it close.
I'm going to go to a game that just got moved to Wednesday. Wednesday night action coming your way when SMU and UCF play against each other. These are two teams that are both top half of the league, and I think that SMU is going to be poised to outgun UCF. I think that the passing attack is a little bit, a lot better than what UCF has so far with John Rice Plumlee. And I think that while UCF's defense has been very, very stout, the inability to create those kind of explosive plays through the air is going to end up costing UCF this game. I think the fact that it's been moved around first to Sunday, then to Wednesday might actually better help SMU in terms of trying to add that to my handicap. But you play this on Saturday, you play this on Sunday, you play this on Wednesday. On Monday night, I had this one circled. I think SMU's got a really good shot to win this game, so I will take those 3 points.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.